I'm going to introduce to you our new priest here at St. Timothy's and let him tell you some things about himself. So this is Father Evan. And these are the ladies, free to be.
Good morning. Hello.
Morning.
A pleasure to be virtually introduced to you. My name is Father Evan Symington. I am actually not a priest of the Diocese of Orange. I am actually a priest of a separate institution in the Catholic Church known as the Ordinariate of the Chair of St. Peter. And I have recently just been assigned here to St. Timothy's starting on July 1st. I kind of began my trip across the country because I was most recently serving in the Diocese of Rochester, New York. And so on July 1st, I packed up all my stuff and moved across the country and arrived here in California on July 9th. And so I've been here getting settled, getting acquainted to Monsignor John Urell, and introduced to a variety of people around town, being able to join you lovely ladies like this, and kind of getting my feet settled in the area. But I was baptized and raised as an Episcopalian, and my mother and father and sister are all still Episcopalians. But through the course of my life, I came to a point of realization that I felt as though I needed to convert and be received into the Catholic Church. And in that time, it was a very fascinating time for issues within the Episcopal Church that were heading in a particular direction. But it was also a very fascinating thing in terms of the Catholic Church, because when I went to college at Florida State University, so much of the national issues within the Episcopal Church were really coming to a head, and there was a lot of problems. So I went to Florida State in 2004 and graduated in 2008. But in 2004, there was a particular issue within the Episcopal Church that was driving so much of the national dialogue about where people felt regarding their Episcopalian faith, that led to an unfortunate split or a schism or a separation. And I was also at this time going through college and sort of really growing much more in my intellectual knowledge of faith, my spiritual experiential life of faith, and then was sort of caught in the middle of this issue that was going on. Shortly after I graduated from Florida State, I found out that there was an opportunity being created by our former Pope, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, created and established a system in the Catholic Church in 2009 called the Calling Together of Anglicans. In this document, Anglicanorum Cedibus, which means the Calling Together of Anglicans, as a way to create a system, a formal system to fully allow Anglicans or Episcopalians or other forms of Protestants to join into the Roman Catholic Church. So to convert, so to leave the Episcopalian Church, join the Catholic Church, but keep and maintain elements of spirituality and liturgy and practice, but become fully part of the Roman Catholic Church. So fully become under the Pope, fully come under Roman Catholic canon law, fully come under all of the different elements of Roman Catholic identity, but also keep and maintain elements of liturgy and spirituality that so much framed my life growing up as an Episcopalian, and framed my experience as a place where I really grew and nurtured and learned to love Jesus. Unfortunately, at that time in 2009, it was only created for the United Kingdom. So it did not exist in the United States at that point. So I took some time after I graduated from Florida State to think about what I wanted to do with my life. And one of the things that I felt like I certainly was very interested in doing was continuing to pursue studies of theology and spirituality and liturgy and my faith in Jesus Christ. So I ended up going to a seminary in Nashotah, Wisconsin. It's called Nashotah House Theological Seminary, and I was received a Master of Divinity there. And during the course of that time, from 2011 to 2014, the ordinariate came to the United States in 2012. And I had heard about it before that time, but but once it came to the United States, I became increasingly more fascinated with the prospect of being able to convert away from Episcopalianism, come into the Roman Catholic Church, but also enter into this unique structure of maintaining so much of the liturgy, the spirituality, the faith in Jesus that I had been sort of framed and trained in. And it was after I graduated in 2014 that I went to Greenville, South Carolina, and was confirmed and received into the ordinariate. Yeah, it was there at that time that I got a chance to experience what in my mind was sort of the blending of two perfect worlds for me. As my as my faith in the Episcopalian Church was kind of growing a bit more confused with the dialogues, the questions, the issues, the dilemmas that were going on there, I found that the Catholic Church had solid grounding in its belief, in its history, in its sacraments. But then I also knew and experienced this richness in the liturgical life of the Anglican and the Episcopal Church that now, as a part of the ordinariate, was brought into full communion. So for me, it was an experience that many of the members of the ordinariate have shared with me as a best of both worlds opportunity. The full grounding in the authority of Peter and his office, all the way up till today in Pope Francis, and then but then also this unique opportunity to worship in a way that we were all comfortable and familiar with. Most recently, I've been serving in the Diocese of Rochester for an ordinary congregation called St. Albans, but I was also helping with a Diocese of Rochester parish called St. Kateri Tekakwitha. And so I was doing a little bit of part-time ministry, not all that dissimilar to what I'm doing here at St. Timothy's, serving part of my time for St. Timothy's and part of my time for the ordinary congregation called St. John Henry Newman, which many of you may know. He was recently canonized just this past year. And so the ordinary is very glad to have the church, give to us the structure of the ordinariate. We have received from Pope Francis the missal, or the text that we use at Mass. And then now for the church to have recognized such a pivotal saint in the life of Anglicanism, and John Henry Newman converted and became a Roman Catholic priest and a Roman Catholic cardinal. I guess those are a couple of things about me and my background. So,
you know what? Can you just share one other thing? I think Monsignor Urell told me that when you were ordained with two of your good friends, but into three different faiths. I just think that's such a lovely story.
Sure, yeah. So when I went to Nashotah House, I entered with an entire class of both married students and single students. But because of the close relationship and the close community that you foster at this seminary, because you live together, you pray together, morning prayer, morning or a daily mass, you go to breakfast together, you go to classes together, you have lunch together, then you work in the afternoon to do some work responsibilities around the seminary, and then you come back again in the evening for evening prayer. This rhythm or pattern of life of work and prayer, as Saint Benedict called ora et labora, the work or the law of work and prayer. This pattern of doing this became the kind of glue that united me and a couple of my friends. So since I graduated from Nashotah House with my Master of Divinity, I neglected to mention that after I graduated from Nashotah, I also went down to a Roman seminary where I did additional education and was fully trained trained and formed as a Roman Catholic priest, and I am a celibate priest. But more to your question and more to your point, that relationship that I had with these guys has really lasted for a very long time. And so ever since we graduated, one of them has gone off and has been ordained in the Episcopalian Church, and one of them has gone off and have been ordained in a separate part of the Anglican Church in America. And then I took a little bit longer, but I then entered into the Catholic Church, entered into the ordinariate, and then was ordained a little bit later. But every year since we've graduated from Nashotah, we've continued to get together as sort of a inter-Anglican summit, that I kind of have the expression of this Roman Catholic identity that has Anglican spirituality and roots, and then my friend Ben, who's an Episcopalian, and then my friend Noah, who's an Anglican. And so we've kind of bridged this divide of all of these different expressions of Anglicanism, and we continue to get together. So one of them helped me move here to California, and then the other one lives here in California in the Central Valley in Los Banos. He drove down south to meet with us and hang out with us when I was here for the first about week or so.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Let me Demas, thank you so much for joining us. And it really just shows, that God is alive and working so well in these beautiful young men. And again, our whole message that we need each other. We need each other. We learn from each other, no matter what faith walk we take. So thank you, Father Evan.
Yeah.
Welcome to St. Timothy's. And someday we're going to get to see him live in person at Free to Be.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks
so much. So again, I'm sorry about our song, but there was a few lines in the song that I really love, and I won't sing it, but I'll send the link to the song in the email today. But one of the song lines says, "There is beautiful mercy in the arms of the Holy One." And then the refrain of the song is, "Now you are free. Go in peace." And that's kind of how I feel every time I go to confession, or maybe every time I feel like I've been forgiven. I feel like I'm free so that I can move on in peace. And that's how we can also offer freedom to other people. By forgiving them, we can become the arms of mercy for others. And that really ties into Sister Melanie's very profound subtitle for this chapter. She calls it the final form of love. So what was Jesus's final form of love as he hung there on the cross? He says, "Father, forgive them. They know not what they do." Sister Melanie began with some really great quotes. A German proverb that says, "If God were not willing to forgive sin, heaven would be empty." And then from poet George Herbert, "He who cannot forgive others breaks the bridge over which he himself must pass." So Sister Melanie then gives us several powerful stories of forgiveness. She talks about the Carmelite priest who died by lethal injection in Dachau. He gave the nurse that injected him his rosary and said that he forgave her. She told a story about a father who lost a son to murder, and he eventually forgave the killer. And about a woman who forgave her husband who had been unfaithful. But I've always loved the story of Saint Maria Goretti. And her story holds many, many layers of forgiveness. Maria Goretti had devoted her life to virginity and to God, and she was brutally stabbed and murdered by a young man that was trying to seduce her. His name was Alessandro Serenelli, and he was imprisoned for 27 years. During his imprisonment, he said that he had visions from Maria Goretti. And in the vision, Maria was in a garden where she picked 14 white lilies and handed each one of them one at a time to Alessandro. Maria had been stabbed by Alessandro 14 times. She made it very clear that she had forgiven him. So after Alessandro's release, he begged Maria Goretti's mother for forgiveness. And she granted it only because she said that Maria had forgiven him on her deathbed. Alessandro then, being a very changed man, entered the Franciscan Capuchins. He worked as a layman in the garden. And during the inquiry of Maria Goretti's beatification, Alessandro testified to her heroic virtue and her martyrdom. And then there were those that also say that he, along with Maria's mother and siblings, were present when Maria Goretti was canonized in 1950. So wow, look at the power of forgiveness, the power of how it can change another's life. Sister Melanie writes that forgiveness is central to our Christian faith and is another trait of a healthy spirituality. And she gives us 3 aspects to consider: the Gospels, forgiveness as a challenge, and forgiveness as a gift. So in the Gospels, Jesus is always teaching us to be merciful, just as our Father in heaven is merciful. He also teaches us, forgive and you will be forgiven. Sister Melanie really challenged me when she wrote, forgiveness itself is a form of worship. And I thought to myself, well, what does that mean? Worship is reverence, it's adoration, it's honoring what is right and true. So I thought, could forgiveness be a means of transformation or becoming more like Christ? So today is the feast of the Transfiguration. When the Transfiguration happened, a few of the apostles were witnesses to this transformation. They got to experience the glory of God in the reality of what was to be. They got to see him glorified by his Father. They had a very spiritual experience, but after the experience, they had to come down from the mountain and they had to live their life, but they lived their life as changed people. And so this is what we're called to do also. We have spiritual experiences, we have moments of insight, but we have to come down from those and we have to live knowing and hoping for what is to come, the glory of God. So we might say that no matter how painful an experience might be, when we are wronged, there is also a time to open our hearts, to let go, and to continue living as that changed person. We enjoy many good things of life, and that brings us a lot of joy, but what truly changes us? It's the bad things that happen in our life, or when we're hurt, when we're possibly sinned against. That is what really changes us. Sometimes making us stronger, able to accept more, or to be, hopefully, to be changed to forgive. So forgiveness typically means that we have been wronged. And I always look at there's levels of forgiveness, just like there are levels of grief. The first level of grief and forgiveness I'm going to compare it to is denial. And there is this wonderful book on forgiveness by Bishop Desmond Tutu. And he writes that denial can be a very, very beautiful thing, because sometimes we are tragically wounded. And just the time for denial allows for a bit of, for the shock to receive and for a bit of healing. The next level is anger. And I know for me, when I have been wronged, I don't want to forgive the person. I don't care if I ever see them again. And actually, for me, sometimes I'm even too angry to talk to God about it. I'll go to church and say, I'm not talking to you today. I've been wronged and you haven't taken care of me. So that's anger. And then there's the bargaining. I can say to God, okay, if I forgive that person, what are you going to give me? What am I going to get out of this? And then there's the depression, the next level, that when I realize I'm really probably not going to get anything back in return, that I have to make a change. I might not even get any remorse from somebody else, and that can lead to some depression. And then finally is the acceptance, knowing what is the right thing to do, so that I can be free and so that they can be free. And then, believe me, this process is a transfiguration. This process sometimes takes years to forgive somebody. Bishop Barron recently gave a talk where he compared our spiritual lives to a piece of artwork. He said he was once invited into an artist's workshop. And he said this artist made these amazing masterpieces. So he just assumed when he went into the workshop that it was going to be neat and clean. But he says when he walked in there was stuff everywhere. He said it was a mess. He says there were paints, there were frames, brushes, canvases, oils, cleaners scattered everywhere. But he said all of this mess is what is required to create the masterpiece. All of the separate pieces are necessary. So just like our lives too, very messy. Not everything has quite fallen into place yet. There might be some phases of dark color and there could be some phases of light color, but we are all still being created in two beautiful pieces of art. Sister Melanie then goes on to say that forgiveness is a challenge. And she states that what we already know, that it's very, very difficult. And I do love the quote that she uses from Gandhi: forgiveness is a virtue of the brave. And then from poet Alexander Pope, to err is human, to forgive is divine. And it reminds me of this beautiful book that I read a few years back. It's called A Mother's Reckoning, written by Sue Klebold. Her son Dylan and another young man killed 12 students, one teacher, and injured 24 other people in the Columbine, Colorado high school shootings. She was a mother that didn't see it coming. So her story is complete braveness and complete divine humility. It's a story of forgiveness, seeking forgiveness, after another seeking forgiveness, after another seeking forgiveness. She sought forgiveness of herself. What did I do wrong? Her husband, her child, her other son, seeking forgiveness from the families that lost their children, from her community. Layers and layers of forgiveness. There is no part of forgiveness that is easy. Then Sister Melanie writes as forgiveness as a gift, and she quotes the beautiful author Wilkie Owl, who states the final goal of human existence is not fulfillment, rather forgiveness is the end point of human life. And to me, that's saying it doesn't matter what possessions we accumulate in this life. It's about our relationships. That is what we hold dear. So what right now is separating us from those we love? Could we be reconciled just in a matter of forgiveness? And I really admire the point that she makes that we do need to forgive ourselves. We are worthy of forgiveness. None of us has done everything right. We've made mistakes in our families, with our husbands, our children, our friends, our workplace. God forbid we have made mistakes in our church community. We are not perfect. Perfection is not attainable. Mercy is attainable. Walk into the arms of mercy. Become the arms of mercy. Forgive. I'm going to end with a beautiful quote by Christian author and theologian Lewis Smedes. And it says, "To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that that prisoner was you. So I'm going to go ahead and break us into groups. I received a wonderful